So we have this production company called Moga Jacobsen. Greg Moga and I are the principal partners in that, and we've been making movies and scripts and other productions for some time. And you know, we both watch PBS, and at one point I sort of said to Greg, God, you know, it just seems like less and less arts are on the PBS station, and I miss that. I grew up in the arts, I love the arts, and can't we try to conceive of something to try to turn that back around and get onto PBS? And also, television is such a powerful medium, and both of us would talk about how powerful it was and how all we see is reality TV shows or crime TV shows and things like that. And so we thought, let's try to create some great TV, that's something that we'd really like to watch that dealt with the arts. So I came up with this idea that we would do something centered around interviewing the greatest artists. You know, I was really lucky to grow up with my dad, Hugh Jacobsen, who's a great architect, and I would sit around that dining room table with him. Well, in truth, actually, I was hired as a waiter usually at that dining room table, but he would have some of the greatest artists in Washington, D.C., and maybe even the United States sitting around that table at some of these parties. And I would listen and be so inspired by their conversations. And so I thought, well, they're all so interesting. Artists are people that have faced massive adversity in their lives. You know, they almost always start as poor and no money, and they fall in love with something, and they love it so much that they want to spend their whole lives doing it, and they don't really care about anything else. They just care about doing their art. So they do it 24/7. 24/7 they study with the masters, they get incredibly disciplined, they master their craft, and because they do all those things, they get really good at it. And because they get good at it, the money comes. And so I thought that would be interesting to get the greatest artists in America and talk to them. So we talked around that idea and penned it out a little bit and sort of thought, okay, where do we start? And let's do a pilot. So we did a pilot, and I'm also the executive director of the film school, and one of the co-founders of that school, along with me and several others, is the great actor Tom Skerritt. And he lives very nearby to us here in Seattle. And so I asked him would he consider doing the pilot with us, and he graciously agreed. And so we went to a Starbucks down in Madison Park in Seattle, and we had our crew, and we shot this couple-hour interview. And Tom was always very articulate, has wonderful stories. We cut that together, and then we started to sort of figure out, okay, we got that, what do we do with it? So we went to KCTS here in Seattle and met with them, and they were lovely and told us a lot of good information. And we also had happened to set up a meeting with several other PBS stations, including WTTW in Chicago. We flew out to Chicago to meet with them. We took them the pilot, and they loved it. So they decided they wanted to take that to PBS to see if they can get it on national TV, which is our goal all along. And meanwhile, Greg and I went back out and we started shooting the series. Our theory was sort of that, well, nobody would know me, John Jacobsen, and no one knew Moga Jacobsen really in the TV, public television world. And we were convinced that by hearing artist after artist and seeing sort of what the main thought of that show was, that people would see what we were trying to do, that we were trying to not just create a magazine interview formatted show talking to artists, but really we were trying to create an inspiring show, a show that showed that people can follow their bliss and work hard and get what they want, and that there were a lot of lessons that artists have to teach all of us, whether we were artists or not. So we started shooting the series, and we were taking these back to WTTW once they were edited, and they were loving it. And then they took it to public television, and they decided they wanted to put it on nationally. And to our great joy, you know, the way public television works is that each little market, I think there's like something like 250, gets to decide do they want to air your show or not. And almost immediately we got 215 of those shows to buy in, and now we're on in about 74% of the market, and that's growing. So we had a great first response. We had a great first season, which is now completed, and now we're moving into our second season. So it's all been tremendously successful for us and very, very exciting.